Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about the structure of the thyroid gland. Now if you remember from previous videos, we talked about how the thyroid gland is this butterfly-shaped gland that sits on the inferior and anterior portion of your cervical region, or neck. Now the thyroid gland has two lateral lobes that are connected by a median mass called the isthmus, and the thyroid gland makes lots of molecules called thyroglobulin, which function as the precursor for thyroid hormone. In fact, this thyroglobulin is stored in conjunction with iodine in a fluid-filled space called the lumen. In fact, that fluid is called colloid. So what we find then are large spaces or lumens within the thyroid gland filled with colloid that's made of thyroglobulin and iodine. Now, the cells that line that lumen are called the follicular cells that actually make thyroid hormone, and the cells that are nearby the lumen are called parafollicular cells, and they secrete the hormone calcitonin. Now looking at this slide, we see on the left the structure of the thyroid gland. As you can see here, these two lateral masses. Now if we look on the right here, we can see a cross-section or histological slide of the microscopic structure of the thyroid gland. Now we can see these large pink spaces within the thyroid gland. These are all lumen. Now the lumen, if you remember, is filled with colloid, and that would be this sort of pink substance you see in here. And the colloid is made of thyroglobulin as well as iodine, which are the precursors to thyroid hormone. So your thyroid is actually capable of storing a sufficient amount of thyroglobulin and iodine to make enough thyroid hormone, for quite a while. Now the follicular cells are the cells that line the lumen here, and these are the cells that actually make colloid and also make thyroid hormone from that colloid. And so these follicular cells that line the lumen. Now the cells that are nearby all those follicular cells are called parafollicular cells, as you can see down here. And these parafollicular cells are the cells that secrete the hormone calcitonin. Now with thyroid hormone, there are actually two different types of the hormone. We'll have T4 and T3. T4 is tetraiodothyronine, and T3 is triiodothyronine. The difference between these hormones is that T4 has 4 iodine atoms attached, and T3 only has 3. Now T4 and T3 are considered nonpolar molecules, which means that they don't dissolve well in your bloodstream. Therefore, T4 and T3 have to bind to thyroxine binding globulins, or TBGs, and these are essentially proteins that allow for T4 and T3 to bind and become more soluble in the bloodstream. In fact, it's these thyroxine binding globulins that actually transport T4 and T3 to peripheral tissues away from the thyroid gland. Now, the difference between T4 and T3 is not just their structure, but that T3 is actually the most potent or active form of thyroid hormone. So T3 is actually 10 times more active than T4. And what's interesting is that T4 can be converted to T3 in peripheral tissues by various enzymes. Now, the way that thyroid hormone gets secreted by the thyroid gland is that it has to be stimulated by other hormones. So what we're looking at here in this slide is the feedback mechanism by which thyroid hormone is released. And it all starts up here at the hypothalamus. Now, if you remember, the hypothalamus was a brain structure in the diencephalon. And the hypothalamus has neurons that release the hormone TRH, or thyrotropin releasing hormone. Now, TRH will travel in the bloodstream to the anterior pituitary gland, where TRH will stimulate thyrotropic cells in the anterior pituitary gland to secrete the hormone thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. Now, TSH that's secreted by the anterior pituitary gland will also travel through the bloodstream and eventually find receptors in the thyroid gland, which can stimulate follicular cells to release thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is going to be the hormone that's actually going to exert an effect on peripheral tissues like target cells. And it turns out that most cells in your body actually respond to thyroid hormone. Now, the way that thyroid hormone concentration is regulated is through a series of feedback mechanisms, as you can see here with the dotted lines, where thyroid hormone itself will actually inhibit the anterior pituitary as well as the hypothalamus from releasing hormones. So the thyroid hormone, once it's at a sufficient concentration, it will prevent release of TSH from the anterior pituitary, and it will also prevent release of TRH from the hypothalamus. Ultimately, this negative feedback mechanism of thyroid hormone helps prevent thyroid hormone levels from becoming too high in concentration in your body. Now, what we see here is a table describing some of the general effects of thyroid hormone on various tissues. So these are going to be some of the tissues or organ systems that are affected by thyroid hormone. And just nearby, it'll talk about the normal physiological effects. Now, if you're interested, you can read more about what happens if you have hyposecretion or hypersecretion of thyroid hormone. But for now, you guys just need to know the normal physiological effects of thyroid hormone on each of the different systems or processes that are listed here. So this first process refers to basal metabolic rate. Now, basal metabolic rate, also denoted as BMR, refers to a baseline level of metabolism you find in cells around your body. Now, thyroid hormone helps modulate metabolic activities in cells throughout your body by promoting the use of normal oxygen use and enhancing the effect of the sympathetic nervous system. Now, what we'll find is that thyroid hormone will also be involved in temperature regulation because many metabolic processes will release heat, and thyroid hormone, because it influences the rate of metabolic processes, it will also help influence temperature in your body. So what you'll find then is in individuals who have hypothyroidism, or basically thyroid hormone below normal concentrations, they're going to have lower body temperatures because they're going to have a lower basal metabolic rate and therefore lower temperature. Now, another system that thyroid hormone helps regulate is basically carbohydrate, lipid, and protein metabolism. Now, thyroid hormone is going to help produce the breakdown of glucose. It's going to help promote the breakdown of fat. It's going to help promote protein synthesis and also enhance the synthesis of cholesterol by the liver. So you can see that thyroid hormone plays a very important role with metabolism around your body. Now, one of the other important roles of thyroid hormone is on the nervous system, where thyroid hormone actually promotes the normal development of your nervous system. So that in absence of thyroid hormone, your nervous system will not develop properly. So childhood hypothyroidism is dangerous because the nervous system won't develop properly and you'll have developmentally stunted individuals. Now, thyroid hormone can also affect the cardiovascular system by promoting normal functioning of the heart. And thyroid hormone also promotes normal functioning of the muscular system and skeletal system. In fact, it's going to help promote development and function of both muscular and skeletal systems. Now, thyroid hormone also plays a role with the gastrointestinal system, or basically your digestive system, by promoting normal gastrointestinal movement or motility. And it's also going to help increase secretion of digestive juices. Now, the role of thyroid hormone on the reproductive system is that it helps promote, normal reproductive development. And what's interesting too is that the thyroid hormone has an effect on your skin or integumentary system by promoting normal hydration and secretions of the skin. So what you might find is an individual with hypothyroidism or low thyroid levels will have abnormally dry skin. Now, we talked about calcitonin as being released by the thyroid gland as well, and calcitonin really doesn't have a known physiological role in humans. It does have a known physiological effect, but it's not known whether the absence of calcitonin really affects any sort of major physiological system. Now remember, calcitonin is released by the parafollicular cells, or C cells, of your thyroid gland. And studies have actually found that at higher than normal doses, what we'll see is that calcitonin actually will inhibit osteoclast activity and help promote the incorporation of calcium into the bony matrix, so that what we see then is that calcitonin will help decrease blood calcium concentration at very high doses. However, you only see these major effects under higher than normal doses, so it's still unknown really what calcitonin does for the body. Now, the parathyroid glands are not considered part of the thyroid gland, but they are attached to the thyroid gland. And so what we'll find then is that the parathyroid glands are a series of 4 to 8 tiny glands that are embedded in the posterior part of the thyroid, and these parathyroid glands release the hormone parathyroid hormone, or PTH. Now, parathyroid hormone is the most important hormone for calcium homeostasis, and what we'll see then here in this particular slide is a posterior view of the thyroid gland here, and these sort of gold-looking circles here are the parathyroid glands. Now, they wouldn't normally look gold in your body. It's just that your book shows them as this color by having them look more distinct. Now, remember, the parathyroid glands release parathyroid hormone. Now, parathyroid hormone is released in response to low blood calcium levels, so that if your blood calcium levels drop too low, parathyroid hormone will get released by the parathyroid gland. This, in fact, is a humoral stimulus, which we talked about in a previous video. And the effects of parathyroid hormone are broad. Now, on bone, parathyroid hormone will actually influence an increase in osteoclast activity. And if you remember from Bio 201, we found that osteoclasts were the types of cells that break down bony matrix. So that osteoclasts will help release calcium from bone into your bloodstream in response to parathyroid hormone, which is released when your blood calcium levels are low. So ultimately, the effects of parathyroid hormone are all to increase blood calcium. In bone, you get this by the breakdown of bone by osteoclasts to help liberate some of that calcium into your bloodstream. Now, what we also see then is in the kidneys, parathyroid hormone increases reabsorption of calcium from filtrate, or what later becomes urine, so that sometimes calcium can be lost into urine, and by reabsorbing some of that calcium in your kidneys, you can prevent calcium loss in urine and help keep that calcium in your body instead of it being excreted. Now, another effect of parathyroid hormone is the activation of vitamin D3 by the kidneys. Now, we learned about how vitamin D3 is released by the integumentary system. Vitamin D3 is calcitriol. And so what activates vitamin D3 is also the presence of parathyroid hormone. And so the kidneys actually will help activate vitamin D3. And the ultimate effect of activated vitamin D3 is increased calcium absorption by the food you eat in your intestinal tract, so that you need activated vitamin D3 in order to get significant amounts of calcium absorption from the food you eat. Now, all of these factors, release of calcium from bone, reabsorption of calcium in your kidneys, and absorption of calcium from your food, all act to increase blood calcium levels, which then can bring you back to homeostasis and then prevent the further release of parathyroid hormone.